and welcome to Lip Service, a podcast that adventures around and all down the line with the Rolling Stones. Please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Simon Harper, and I shall be your host for this series of conversations that celebrate the life and music of the greatest rock and roll band in the world. We've got sights and sounds and marvels to delight your eyes and ears, so join us as we journey down the road a piece, from Dartford days to Hackney Diamonds and beyond, exploring the songs and stories from along the way with friends and special guests.
Today's guest is Bernard Fowler, backing vocalist for the Rolling Stones since 1989 and a formidable talent in his own right. Born and raised in Queensbridge, New York, Bernard's musical journey began amid the vibrant, genre-blending backdrop of 1970s New York City, where gospel, soul, Latin rhythms, disco, and the early roots of hip-hop filled the air. His early work included singing with the Peech Boys, a pioneering group in the New York club scene known for their association with legendary DJ Larry Levan and the Paradise Garage, the influential downtown club that defined dance music culture. From there, his voice carried him into collaborations with producers Bill Laswell and Michael Beinhorn, leading to a key role on Herbie Hancock's Future Shock album and the groundbreaking track Rocket. In this conversation, Bernard reflects on his musical upbringing, his unexpected first meeting with Mick Jagger, and the decades he's spent as an essential part of the Stones' touring and recording world. We discuss the moments that shaped his career, from studio sessions to global tours, his experience fronting his own solo work, including the spoken word reinterpretation album Inside Out, and the deep musical instincts that have guided him through every chapter. So here it is, Bernard Fowler in full voice and full flight. Enjoy the show. Welcome to Lip Service, Bernard. Nice to have you here.
Nice to be here.
So I'd love to know a little bit more about you and your time within and without the Rolling Stones. But I wanted to start at the beginning. You grew up in Queensbridge, New York. Was your home a musical one?
Queensbridge, Long Island City, Queens. I guess you can kind of say it was a musical one. I grew up in Queensbridge projects and I listened to a lot of music. I listened to a lot of everything, predominantly soul music and salsa music. And in my house, in my private space, I listened to the Rolling Stones.
amongst all those others, because it was very much a breeding ground for music as well. I mean, there's a lot of artists came from Queensbridge. I mean, Nas came from there. It was kind of like a ground zero almost for hip hop.
Yeah, this is true. Nas is from there. Molly Mall is from there. I used to see Rakim, I'd be going to the plaza, going to get on the train, and Rakim would be getting off the train going into Queensbridge. A lot of hip hop cats came out of Queensbridge. Mobb Deep came out of Queensbridge. As a matter of fact, we lived in the same building. They lived across the hall from me.
And what do you think it was about the area that kind of produced so many artists?
What was it about? I think it was just about the music. Where we grew up in Queensbridge. Queensbridge is the first stop out of Manhattan. It's the first stop on the train out of Manhattan. As a matter of fact, from the backyards of a lot of people in Queensbridge, you see the skyline of New York City. And I think that had a lot to do with it. We were connected. From Queensbridge, it was one train stop from Manhattan, one bridge from Long Island City to Brooklyn. So we were all, kind of linked up that way. as far as music goes, I think it was just radio. It was radio. We listened to the radio. You know, in my day, it was
Yeah.
WWRL, which became WBLS. During WWRL was, you know, the Symphony Sid Show, WRVR Jazz Radio. Speaking of jazz radio, Nas's father and I were friends. Olu Dara. We worked with some of the same people, and again, I'd be coming and he would be going, or vice versa. You know, I guess music was a type of escapism for a lot of us.
Yeah. I mean, you picked up instruments as a kid, I read, but it was singing that you eventually focused on. What was it that kind of drew you to the human voice as an expressive instrument?
What gravitated me towards singing was probably, you know, the voice was free. Instruments cost money. There wasn't a lot of money for instruments. Um, uh, I did play some instruments as a kid. They weren't mine; they were borrowed. And the first performance I ever did in front of an audience, I played upright bass in a salsa band.
Right.
And then in school, you know, gravitated towards bass and then trombone. And I guess I sang better than I played either one of them. And, you know, between that and playing basketball, you know, I eventually gravitated towards singing. I always sang, you know, at home and in the school glee club and you know, the school chorus. So I always sang, but I it was something that I enjoyed doing, but uh, I never thought about doing it as a profession.
I mean, I read that you had a teacher that was particularly supportive and encouraging of you to work on your vocals. I wonder how that impacted your commitment to it.
Yeah. Well, all of my music teachers were really supportive, but especially she was. I'm trying to think. Was she high school? Maybe she was high school or junior high. Her name was Regina Rellan, and I I wasn't taking it very serious, but she saw in me that I had vocal ability, and that was one teacher. But it was another teacher that heard me singing in school, and I would think I was in junior high school, and she heard me singing, and she and her husband was a singer songwriter, and she suggested that I meet her husband,
Right.
and I went to her house. I met her husband, and worked on a few songs with him, and at that point, I had never did any singing other than in the neighborhood. So I went and rehearsed with him, and a week or two later, I was in a club singing with him and some really incredible musicians. Um, you know, and this was my first gig. This was my first gig, um, my first club gig. In that band, in that band were incredible musicians. I knew who they were because I was an avid album cover reader. And like I said, I listened to a lot of radio. And in that band was Chris Parker on drums, um, Hiram Bullock on guitar,
Mm-hmm.
a guy by the name of Brian Osop, who I think he had passed away, years and years ago, and David Sanborn. David Sanborn and a guitar player by the name of Jim Satin. and I was I was in awe. You know, I had read those guys' names on records, and here I am, this young junior high school kid singing with them in a club.
How did it feel to be there then?
It was incredible. It was incredible. I was a little nervous, of course, you know, a little intimidated, but it was an incredible feeling. It went well. The audience loved it, and you know, after the gig, my teacher drove me back to the projects, and I, you know, I'm forever grateful to her because you know, Queensbridge at the time was a rough neighborhood, and it wasn't many, you know, young white ladies walking through the projects. But she did not have a problem walking through the projects to my house, picking me up, taking me to the gig, and
Yeah,
bringing me back home. So I am forever grateful for Miss Heidi Ludwig.
absolutely. God bless her. So
God bless
what
her.
era are we looking at here? Is this the early 70s?
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, at that time, New York is just, it's a hotbed of music scenes, right? Glam is giving way to punk rock, soul's giving way to disco, funk
hmm
is beginning to give way to hip hop. I mean, it must have been incredible to be at the center of all that. Were you out catching music at the time? And what were you going to see most? What were you drawn to?
I was. Who I saw a few bands around that time. Not so much, you know, as you call disco. It was a lot of soul bands. I went and saw, you know, Cool and the Gang. I saw Cool and the Gang a lot. As a matter of fact, the band that I played trombone with, you know, was a type of Cool and the Gang top 40 band. I
Sure.
used to go see uh, Cool and the Gang, the Barkays, um, Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, the Delphonics, the Stylistics, Mandrill, and Parliament Funkadelic. I saw them a lot of times. I even saw the Mothership Connection.
Awesome.
I
In
saw
their
the
prime as
Mothership
well.
Connection. I saw the Mothership Connection at Radio City, and you know that was incredible to me because I was a huge fan and still am a huge fan of Glenn Goins. Glenn Goins, who's no, I'm not. I'm a huge fan of Glenn Goins, but I was a huge fan of anybody that sang with George Clinton.
Yeah.
Anybody that sang with George Clinton. There was nothing else moved me the way the vocals, the people that sang with George did.
Yeah.
Incredible.
I mean, if you're not moved by Funkadelic in general, then you're probably dead.
I agree.
It was a soul band that you made your first recordings with, right? The Total Eclipse.
That's right.
So, what were your hopes and ambitions then? Did you see a future in music? Is that what you
I
wanted to
had
do?
not even thought of that. I hadn't thought that far because, again, I, you know, music as a career was not on my radar then. You know, I was into playing basketball. I played basketball as a young kid, just about all my life up until then.
Mhm.
You know, I was playing. I was a good young ball player. I played. You know, I played with seniors my first year in high school, and um, you know, this guy heard me singing, you know, after a game. We're in the neighborhood and I'm out there singing. And some guy who was dating this girl that I knew asked me to audition for his band. And I did. And a week later, I was in a recording studio recording an album with this band.
And that band uh, contained Stephen Brown, I believe.
Yeah, that uh, he Stephen Brown joined that band later. He was not the original drummer in that band, or when I was in that band. The original drummer went by the name of a brother by the name of Calvin Wallace. He was the original drummer, and
Got you.
Stephen came some years later.
Stephen was the one who brought you into what became the Peech Boys, right?
That's right.
So, what had changed in the scene by then, musically, stylistically? What then were the Peach Boys sort of aiming for?
Well, the Peach Boys, we were trying to create something different. Um, we all grew up listening to James Brown and funk and stuff, and now you got this. You got club music,
Sure.
disco club music, and it was we had the vision of making we gravitated away from the word disco. We wanted a club band, a dance band that had some edge to it, and that edge would be a rock guitar. That was something that we always thought about. No, it's got to have a rock guitar, and there was somebody that these guys knew who was that. And so he became part of the band, and then I guess we felt like we were complete, and we did a lot of recording. We all lived in a loft on 30th Street, which was the music block at the time.
And your biggest hit then, well, if you could call it a hit, your most known song is "Don't Make Me Wait," which, as
Yeah,
we know, is produced by Larry Levan. Can
yep.
you
You
tell
can
me about
call
your?
it a hit.
Yeah. So, how did you guys get connected with Larry?
You can call it a hit. Larry, Larry, before the Peach Boys, even when I was in Total Eclipse, that same guitar player that asked me to audition for that band uh, came to me one day and he was like, B, he used to call me B Burgers, B Burgers. There's this club I gotta take you to. He said, everybody ain't gonna get it. He said, but you, he said, I know you'll get this right away. And he took me, we went to the city and he took me to this club called Reed Street, which was, uh, which was downtown Manhattan. And we walked into this place and I just remember it being really dark, and there was aluminum foil on the walls as you walked in, but you could hear the music pumping. And the cat that was spinning was Larry Levan. He had mentioned his name on the way there, and we actually got to say hello to him, really fast. Larry was super popular New York DJ, and the he I think at that time Larry was making playlists for WBLS radio for the DJ Frankie Crocker. So okay, so after I left the Total Eclipse, and we were doing the Peach Boys. Before the Peach Boys were Peach Boys, the Peach Boys were called Snatch.
Right.
And before Don't Make Me Wait, we had a record, we had a deal with, I think, Millennium Records. Millennium Records, Jimmy Ina, Donnie Ina. And we went into the studio and we recorded a version of Another Brick in the Wall, Pink Floyd version. It was a dance version of Pink Floyd's Another Brick in the Wall.
Right.
And we were trying to get it played. And we had a meeting one day, and somebody said something about Larry Levan. Maybe it was Michael D. Benedictus. Maybe it was him, but that name was mentioned, and I was like, oh yeah, I know who. I know who you know who that is. I said, of course I know who that is. I used to go and see him spin at a place called Reed Street. None of them knew about Reed Street. All they knew at that time was Larry Levan, who makes playlists for Frankie Crocker's playing at the garage.
Mm-hmm.
And so we set out to meet Larry Levan, and we did. And Larry would come to the loft, and I think he did spin the record in the club, but it didn't take hold. So we continued to record, and we became friends. Larry became friends of ours. He would visit the loft often, and then we went we went in the studio one day. They went into the studio one day and recorded stuff. And myself and Stephen Brown, we were around that time. I'm not sure what order, but I had met Bill Laswell and Michael Beinhorn, and they had a project called Material.
Yeah.
And I had gotten a call from them. Michael Beinhorn, Bill Laswell, and Roger Trilling, who was like the manager of Material, and they invited me. They invited me to a meeting, and we sat and we talked, and they wanted me to sing on this record that they were making called One Down. There was a lot of turmoil in the Peech Boys, so when I was asked to do that, I was happy to do it. I was happy to step away, but so I recorded some stuff for them on the One Down album. Oh, I'm getting things kind of mixed up here. Okay, so I was talking about Another Brick in the Wall. So Another Brick in the Wall, that didn't happen. Then the Snatch became the Peech Boys and Larry Levan, and then Don't Make Me Wait, and then Life is Something Special was recorded, and it was a hit. It was on the radio. I couldn't leave my house without hearing it, and people would refer to me. Yeah, the people in my neighborhood would say, "Hey, Don't Make Me Wait, what's happening?" My name became Don't Make Me Wait.
Great.
And then things started to go bad with the Peech Boys. And then I got the call from Beinhorn, Laswell, and Trilling. So I went and recorded some stuff on their One Down album, and that became kind of a New York City buzz track. The track was called "I'm the One," and Peach Boy fell apart, due to members in the band, thinking that they could do it, but they forgot that what they forgot was that the songs that were being played that everybody was loved was written by me and the guitar player.
Right.
And so I always say this, I pretty much gave them enough rope to hang themselves, and I left.
Right.
I left, and again, Beinhorn and Laswell gave me a call, and then I to sing on the Herbie Hancock Future Shock record.
That's quite a call to get.
Yeah. I was a big Herbie Hancock fan, and then there was a slight problem because I was under contract with the Peech Boys, and but I wasn't gonna let that get in my way of singing for Herbie Hancock. So
Yeah.
I sang some stuff on there, and I used an alias on that record. I think it was Norris Knight or something like that.
Yeah.
And after the Herbie Hancock Future Shock record took off, Rocket became a huge hit.
Oh, that's a classic.
Yes, so that's the opening of the hip hop era.
Absolutely.
And before that and during that, I did a lot of recordings with African Bambaataa and some other, hip hop, B-side, which is funny. People, you don't hear people mention her name, but B-side did a track with Fab Five Freddy that was rocking the radio, and you don't hear about that record that often. So I'm happy to give her a shout out. She
Great.
was at the forefront, and so I get a call from Roger Trilling asking me, "Hey man, do you want to sing for Herbie Hancock?" He's, Rocket was so strong. Herbie had to tour, and I jumped at the opportunity, and now I'm traveling with Herbie Hancock. At the during the biggest record of his career at that time.
Yeah, I mean that must have been a pretty steep learning curve going on the road with Herbie.
Yeah, it was incredible. It was a good time. All of us. It was an incredible opportunity for all of us. Myself, all the band, and DST, and JT Lewis, Wayne Brathwaite, Anton Fear, Jeff Bova. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was an incredible opportunity for us all.
I mean, even at that point, Herbie was obviously a legend. He was a veteran, I suppose. He'd been around for years, played with everybody. Did he?
Yeah,
Was he?
he
Did he
was.
become a mentor to you?
No, no, I don't think Herbie became a mentor to any of us. We got him the success he wanted, and that was that. I think the only person that spent any time with Herbie after that was DST.
Right.
But it was an incredible opportunity. Incredible. I mean, to hear him play every night was incredible. Incredible. And we were on a bus. For about a year and a half touring around on the bus, and we were young. We were young. We were crazy. You know. We learned a lot of good things, and we learned a lot of bad things.
I bet you did. Yeah.
We learned a lot of bad things.
Well,
A lot of bad things. People say sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Sex, drugs. And it wasn't rock and roll, but it had the same attitude.
I mean, given your friendship with Bill Laswell, you obviously trusted him. He'd got you his opportunities. You must have trusted him with putting you up for good gigs. But in 1985, when he told you, without sharing any details, to get on a plane to London, did you have any second thoughts?
I don't know if I had second thoughts. Again, I was young, as Bobby Keys would say, full of piss and vinegar. And he said, go back to the airport. I don't even think I asked him why. And I didn't ask, what for. I did say to him, Bill, you don't understand. I just walked in the door, and he just said, okay, go back to the airport. And I did. I didn't know what I was doing or where I was going. I just went to the airport, and I thought it was fun. It's funny because the lady behind the counter, I guess she thought it was kind of strange too, because she said, "Where are you going?" And I said, "I don't know." She said, "What's your name?" I gave her my name, and she said, "Oh, okay." She said, "Well, okay, you have a first class ticket to London." I was like, "Okay." And I went to London.
So what happened when you got there?
Bill picked me up, and we're driving through London talking about music, and end up at a house in Swiss Cottage. Rowan, big black dude, opened the door and just said he said, "Hi, Bill, he's in there," and pointed to a room, and Bill walked in, I walked in behind him, and there was a guy sitting on the floor, and I didn't know who this guy was, and Bill walked over to the guy and said, "Hey man, this is Bernard. This is the guy I've been telling you about." And the guy turned around, and it was Mick. And of course I was shocked, And Bill leaves the room, and I'm standing there, I was still in shock. Oh shit, that's fucking Mick Jagger.
Well, you would be.
And Bill leaves the room. And Mick, Mick invited me down on the floor where he was, and you know, we're he's strumming and we're singing, and he gave me a cassette. After maybe 45 minutes or so, I do remember I was really tired. I was really tired, and he gave me a cassette, and he said, this is what we're going to work on tomorrow in the studio. I said, okay, and I went back. I went to the hotel, and I put the cassette in my four-track Fostex multi-track cassette recorder, and I listened to the songs, and I started recording vocals on my recorder. And the next day we went to the studio and played them what I did, and the rest is history.
Yeah. So that was the beginning of the recording of She's the Boss, his debut solo album.
That's right.
What was it like in the studio? Was it something specific that he wanted, or was he letting you do your thing with those things that you'd recorded?
He listened to. I asked him to listen to what I had done in the hotel room, and he said, "Oh wow, you did that last night after you left me." I'm like, "Yeah." He said, "Okay, let's do that." And I went in there and did what I did on the Fostex. And he seemed to be pleased. He was pleased. So if he was pleased, I was definitely pleased, because there were tons of other people that could have been there instead of me. So I did that, and then I left there and went back on the road with Herbie, and I didn't see Mick or hear from him for a while after.
Well, he didn't tour that record, but a couple of years later, '88, after the release of Primitive Cool, he decided to do a tour. He was going to do in Japan, Australia, and New Zealand.
That's right.
You were eventually enlisted as a vocalist on that tour, but it almost didn't happen. What happened there?
Well, at that time I was in a rehearsal studio rehearsing with, Carmine Rojas, and a bunch of other people. We were rehearsing for a gig in the south of France, and I had heard Mick had been in that rehearsal place, and I had also heard that he had been auditioning male vocalists, but no one called me. So we were in the same rehearsal place doing our individual things, and I was going to the bathroom, and I walked out, and there's an entourage coming up the corridor of SIR, and Mick's in the middle of it, and I kind of got his eye and kind of waved at him, and he went in, and then some woman comes into my rehearsal place asking, "Is there Bernard Fowler in here?" And it's really funny. I remember that because, what was really funny about that is that nobody knew who this young white girl was. She came in asking for Bernard Fowler, and I remember no one said anything. Everybody stopped and it was weird. Everybody looked. No one said anything. It was like, it was probably seconds, but it felt longer. And I said, I didn't know who she was, and I said, "Well, I'm Bernard." And she says, Mick's been looking for a male singer and wants to know if you would like to audition. And she left the room, and I was like, audition? I did his first album. I did the vocals on that first album. What is this audition stuff? And I remember I said, "Fuck that, I'm not auditioning." And I'm forever grateful to Carmine Rojas, because he took me to the side and said to me, "You know what? Put that shit aside." He said, "Go in there and do the audition." He said, "Even if you don't do the gig, go in there, do the audition. Go in there and knock their fucking socks off." She gave me a cassette of 4 songs, and I don't think what what they didn't know was that I was a Rolling Stone fan. So all the 4 songs that were on that cassette, I was pretty much familiar with. So I went into the rehearsal room, went to the bathroom, listened to the songs, and I went into where they were at, and just the musicians of doom were in the room. I mean, just these were Joe Satriani and Doug Wimbish, Simon Phillips. These were the cats. Jeff Beck had just left. So I remember walking into the room, and Jimmy Rip, who was guitar player, who's who's a really good friend of me now. I remember walking in, and Jimmy had looked at me, kind of like, oh, here we go again. We got to audition another one of these guys, and kind of put this face on like, are you ready here? And I took offense to that.
Right.
I took offense to the way that he said that to me. And at that moment, I said to myself, I'm going to show them. And the band started playing, and I was spitting fire. I was spitting fire. And at the end of the last song, I turned around to the band and ended the song. And once again, the room went quiet. I took the lyrics and cassette, walked over to where Mick was, gave them the cassette and the stuff back, and went into my room. And then that same girl that came in there and asked for me came back in and asked when I can start. And I told her, she said something about, we're rehearsing, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, I can't do that. I think she was a little taken back by me saying, well, I can't do that. And she said something. I said, well, I'm in here rehearsing for a gig. She said, well, when will you be back? And I told her when I would be back. And I think she left and came back and said, okay, we'll see you when you get back. And I kind of been hanging around the boys ever since.
Absolutely. I mean, you obviously left a big impression, because after the tour, you're then asked to contribute vocals to what was going to be the next album, Steel Wheels. And this was a very difficult time. It was the first time the band had been in the studio for 4 years since the tensions around Dirty Work. And there was a lot of arguments. And things must have just been a bit raw. Were you aware of any tensions? Was there still any dust to be settled?
I was totally aware of it. I was aware.
I know there was a bit of a chasm between Mick and Keith, and you obviously came in as Mick's friend or someone that had worked with him previously. I've read that Keith could be suspicious of Mick's people. Did you feel any pressure not to just be seen as Mick's guy? Were you working hard to ingratiate yourself into the fold in general?
I was okay. Their thing was between them. I was okay. But, I wasn't aware that, I wasn't aware of the separation of camps like that. Keith even said to me, he didn't want to like me because he thought I was one of Mick's boys, and I was like, I'm nobody's boy. I'm here to make to work for the Stones, pretty much. And I said, yo, man, I'm cool, man. And again, I have to say thank you for Steve Jordan, because Keith had spoke to Steve Jordan, and Steve Jordan told Keith, gave me a good report. So, so I got a pass.
Those are the same sessions that saw the debut of Lisa Fisher. Did you guys know each other before the Stones brought you together?
I knew Lisa way before the Stones.
What was it like to sing with her?
I love her. She's my favorite female vocalist. I've never said that before. She is my favorite female vocalist. I have learned a lot from her. I have learned a lot from her. We have learned a lot from each other. And she's my go-to if if I need something, and it's usually not usually, but a lot of times it's a little unusual, of stuff that I'm recording that I want, and she's the one that I will call and ask. I love her tremendously. I love her voice. I love her person. She's one of the best people I know.
You were you went out on the road with the Steel Wheels tour, and you've sang on every tour since then. You mentioned earlier on about knowing the Stones songs and being a fan. I mean, your voice it's more than just a backing singer when you're with the Stones. You're adding colour, you're adding textures to songs that may not have previously had that kind of landscape to them. So how do you tend to compose new melodies for older songs?
Well, as a fan, when I go to see a band, especially one that I'm familiar with, if I'm familiar with that music, I understand, it being live. So no, it doesn't. It's not going to be exactly as the record. I understand that, but there are some textures. When I go to see a band and I'm familiar with, there are some textures that I want to feel.
Sure.
And so that's what I try to do with them. I listen to the recording, and they the way that their vocals hit, it's similar to the way that George Clinton's voices hit. It's loose, but it's right. There's a looseness to it, but there's a feel good to it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I try to add. I try to add a familiar texture that feels good.
Right. And you're also acting as something of a counterpoint to Mick. You're there to work with him and support behind him as well.
Absolutely. Again, when I listen to the records, there are parts of the produced record where his voice is doubled. It may be doubled or he may be harmonizing with himself.
Yeah.
So, and again, as a fan, if I'm in the audience and I'm not hearing that double or that harmony that he's saying, for me, it would feel like something is missing. So that's how I approach it. Try to double it where it needs to be doubled and harmonize with it where it needs to be harmonized. Now, they don't perform the songs like the record, but I still want to add that feeling to that live performance.
The power and range of your voice. I mean, you could, if you wanted to, you could blow Mick off the stage with your voice, but you've got to ensure that what you're doing is complementing him. And so
Absolutely.
you're performing your best, but you're not stealing the attention. I mean, there must be quite a temptation for you just to absolutely blast off.
No, well, no, I'm not. I'm not there to showcase me. I'm there to support the Rolling Stones. I'm there to make them shine. That's my gig.
Yeah.
That is the gig. That is the gig. When I'm not with them is when I get to blow the lid off.
Yeah. And do you ever get kind of lost in the moment? Because I mean, you're singing songs that you know, but there's also, I suppose, an instinctive element to it, an improvisation maybe. Is there points where you kind of get lost in what you're doing?
That does happen. I've kind of settled into it because before the Stones, I was doing a lot of my own stuff, and when they're not working, I still do all my own stuff. I would say at the very beginning because everything that I had been involved in before then, I was the front person.
Yeah.
So I would say the first tour, the way I've said this before, it was the yeah. It took a minute for me to settle in it because it was like I was a soda. I was a bottle of soda with the thumb over the top of it.
Waiting to pop.
Yes. After the first tour, I think I kind of settled into it. I settled into it, and
Yeah. And you've obviously sang on subsequent albums, Bridges to Babylon and A Bigger Bang. When you're involved in the studio, are you involved at all in the arrangement of the vocals as it's being developed?
not that much. Once in a while, there's a once in a while there's an idea. I may throw an idea. I think the most involved I think would probably be How Can I Stop? Which was a song that Keith sang. That was because the parts on that song, the background parts on that song, I created when he was writing that song. When it was time to record that song, I remember being in the studio and, okay, it was time to do that, but I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything. I just let it happen the way it's gonna happen. But then we were going around in circles, and
Right.
it was going around and around. And I remember saying something to Don, and he was like, "Oh no, just let it." And I'm like, "Okay." And it kept going and going and going, and it wasn't working. And then finally, I said something. I'm like, I have the idea. I can do this. So then I worked out, gave people the parts, and then it got done. It got done. But the ideas for those background parts, uh, something that people don't know about Keith. Keith loves a ballad. He is a closet balladeer.
All right.
He's a closet balladeer. There have been times when we were on the road before the show. Yes, you'll hear, you hear, Slim Harpo, Eddie Taylor, you'll hear all the, the classic blues stuff. You hear that coming out his room. But, but more times than not, you might hear the Spinners playing in his room. You might hear the Shy Lights playing in his room. So when he was writing that song, that was something that I thought about. So those backgrounds, especially the beginning of it for that particular song, I based those backgrounds off the Shy Lights.
Right. Yeah, you can hear that.
Yes, I based those background parts off the Shy Lights, and then after the opening of the song, the rest of the stuff I just created as it came to me.
Yeah. Do you have a preference over doing studio work and stage work?
I'm happy when I'm singing, but I will say one of the biggest joys, I love being in the studio. I love, I love bringing an idea to life. And I absolutely love singing background parts. I love singing background parts. So a lot of times background parts is what makes the song. A lot of times it's the background stuff that the average person walking up the street is singing.
Mm-hmm. Counter melodies.
Exactly.
Your most recent solo album, Inside Out, it's a great album. You present songs, Stone songs, but
Yeah.
the lyrics are presented in a spoken word style. It really kind of accentuates Mick Jagger's use of language. What is it that you personally appreciate most about Mick's lyrics? Do you think he's underrated as a lyricist?
Probably so. I think it's almost like people are so busy partying and drinking that they ain't really hearing it.
Right.
You know, yeah, some of his early lyrics are pretty powerful. You know, you know, it was an idea that I had been throwing around for a long time before I actually got to it. You know, originally that record was only going to be percussion and voice. You know, hearing people, people, my musical peers that I let hear it. It morphed into something else. Vince Wilburn, drummer Vince Wilburn. I had told him what I was going to do, and Vince was like, "Yo, B, you come to the house. You can record at my house." And I have this project in my head, and I'm still formulating the ideas, and I'm still looking for the right um, Jagger Richards lyrics that I'm gonna use. And I went to his house and I called Daryl Jones. I called Daryl to come over. Daryl and Vince grew up with each other. Vince is Miles Davis' nephew. Daryl and Vince, grew up with each other, so I knew that was a good fit to
Yeah.
have Vince and Daryl together. And they have a friend also from Chicago, and it just worked. It was perfect because the rhythm section was perfect. The rhythm section was perfect. Vince Wilburn, Chicago. Daryl Jones, Chicago. Uh, Vince's friend, who's now our friend, George Evans, Chicago. And I was so blessed to have from Detroit the great Ray Parker Jr. And I wanted the rhythm section to have a kind of soul feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was perfect. It was perfect. And the other stuff that doesn't have them on. So I was here where I am now at the Steakhouse Recording Studio, which is where I always work. As a matter of fact, I'm working on my new project here at the Steakhouse. So I was here listening, and I got a call from Steve Jordan, and he says, "Yo, man, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Where you at?" I said, "I'm in the studio." "What are you working on, man?" I said, "I'll send you a taste." So I sent him a taste, and like 5-10 minutes later, he called back and said, "Yo, man, I got to play on that." And I'm like, "Well, cool. Well, where are you at?" He's in New York. So I said, "Well, okay, well, I'm here." So I guess a few weeks later, I'm in the studio, and he calls and says, "Yo, man, where you at? What you doing?" I said, "I'm in the studio." The next thing I know, somebody's at the door with a drum kit. He sends a drum kit over, and then he comes in. But he didn't come in by himself. He comes in with Clayton Cameron.
Mm-hmm.
Clayton Cameron, who spent damn near 30 years with Tony Bennett, played with Frank, played with Sammy Davis Jr., known as the Jazz Brushmaster. So I got Steve Jordan and Clayton Cameron in the studio. And it was incredible. And then I met Michael Bearden through Steve. And I met Mike Garson from doing, I did a Bowie tribute with
Yeah.
Mike Garson, and so these cats came to the studio and played for me, and I, to this day I can't thank them enough, because they did it for me because they got love for me.
So when you've got the right musicians, you need the right material. How did you then whittle down your favourite songs to cover?
The lyrics determined that. I went through the Rolling Stone songbook, just really fast, just reading quick, and I'm looking for a certain strength, a certain energy, and those are the songs that gave me that energy when I read them. And it's funny because it's a spoken word record,
Yeah.
and whenever I grew up listening to the Last Poets. Those are the records that my brother brought home, that I heard, that played. Those are the records that played in my neighborhood before. This is way before rap. There was the Last Poets. There was the Black Panther Party, the Young Lords, and it was spoken word. And that was my inspiration for that record.
Inside Out followed The Bureau from 2015, your previous album.
Yes.
There was
Yes.
a couple of covers on that as well, a Stones and a Beatles track, but it was also original material that you wrote yourself. So I wanted to ask you about all the experience you've had working with the Stones and other artists. How have they shaped your skills as a songwriter?
I guess it's just listening. Listening. I don't consider myself a great songwriter. I have moments.
Right.
There are people who are prolific. I am not that. When I'm writing, if it doesn't strike me the right way, I won't continue. I will move on to it. So anything that's on that record, anything original on that record, was something that felt good to me. There's other stuff that I started, but like I said, it didn't feel good to me, so I didn't use it. Sometimes it comes fast, and sometimes it becomes labor.
Right.
A perfect example for that would be, the songs for the 2 Ronnie Wood records that I produced. Those songs came to me pretty fast. Let's say for the first record of Ronnie's, it was easy for me because I'm thinking of him and his world. So those songs were crafted around that. The first song that I wrote for Slide on This was a song about him and his wife.
Right.
And that song was called Josephine. And it came like that.
So almost like you're assuming a character.
Exactly. It came so fast. And then, once I got that momentum, then going on to the next one and going on to the next one came pretty easy. And the same thing for his next record, I Feel Like Playing. Now him and his wife were going through a thing, and I went home after meeting with him, and there was nothing for us to really get started on. I went home and sat and thought about him, and the first song for that record that I wrote was I Gotta See.
I mean, you mentioned you're in the studio now. Does that mean you're working on some new solo projects?
I am working on a new solo project.
Anything you can divulge, or is it still top secret?
It's unlike anything I've ever done before in my life. It's probably, musically, it's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
Well, that sounds like a challenge.
Man, this challenge almost broke me because I started it and then I went away from it. I stepped away from it because I think what I had done, I I had put too much pressure on myself,
Mm-hmm.
and some people that I was working with, they were pressuring me to finish it, and no, I wasn't gonna do that. So I had to shut them down and step away from it. And I stepped away from this project for close to a year
Mm-hmm.
before I got back to it. And once I got back to it, I realized how beautiful it was, and I was really happy to do it. I've, a lot of people, and again, it's probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And I came up with this idea after Inside Out. I went to Uruguay to record percussion of candombe masters, because I was going to do another record like Inside Out. I really enjoyed making that record, so I was going to do another one. So I went to Uruguay to record some candombe masters.
Mm-hmm.
And during that time, I took a break and I was walking around Montevideo, and I was thinking, just trying to think what I was going to do next. Yeah, I don't know. Fucking big ideas are not always good ones. So walking around Montevideo, I had this big idea, because I had been going back and forth to Argentina. And Argentina's just over the River Plate from Montevideo. So as I'm walking through Montevideo, I'm thinking, what am I going to do next? And I thought, you know what, maybe I'll do a tango. Yeah, my big fucking idea. And so that's where I am. That's
Right.
what I'm doing.
Well, it sounds intriguing and exciting. For a long time now, for years, the Stones have been asked how long they can continue, but they still do. I mean, you're a spring chicken in comparison, but I imagine it still takes a lot for you to get up and perform and do what you do, especially on a tour. So, how do you maintain your energy and vocal health on the road?
By keeping to myself and staying with the people that are around me. Somebody told me, some spiritual person told me a while ago to be careful because I'm an empath. And my years with the Stones, I have learned that everybody doesn't mean everybody's not good for you.
Right.
And it had come to a time. I mean, I was told that a while ago, and then I started to feel like every time that that I'm around too many people, every time that I'm touching hands, it felt like I was being zapped.
Yeah.
It felt like I was being zapped. And then I remembered she said that to me. And so at some point, traveling with the Stones, I started to kind of stay a little more to myself, or with my road family. Mm-hmm. And so that I tried to keep my energy up.
And do you have any kind of specific vocal warm-ups or things you do
I
before the
do.
shows?
I do. I have vocal warm-ups that I do. I have vocal exercises I do. I have vocal elixirs that I gargle with. I always warm up before every show. If I forget, or if I don't do it in my room, I'll do it, in the dressing room.
Yeah.
But I try to always at least do it in my hotel before I leave and go to sound check. I always try to do a vocal warm up, and and some type of gargle. I'm always trying to gargle something.
Can you notice the difference if you don't do those things?
Absolutely. Especially as time went on, the older I got, the more yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think like there was a time when I could walk in cold and do my thing. I mean, I could probably still do it, but I don't think it's too safe. So rather than I mean, there has been times where I've done it, here and there, but as a rule, I always try to warm up.
Yeah. I mean, you've enjoyed a great career on your own. You've enjoyed a great long association with the Stones. Looking back, I wonder what lessons they may have taught you about longevity and adaptability in the industry.
Well, I think they are unlike anybody else. I think something that they are is something that I've always wanted. I've always wanted something that Living Color is. I've always wanted. I never wanted to be out here by myself. I always wanted to be part of a band. But I found out pretty early on that keeping that together is probably the hardest thing that you can do.
Yeah. Well, you've got a lot of egos and a lot of chemistry.
Yes. That's why, when I look at Living Color, I'm like, man, hats off to you guys. To have this long of a career and you're still together, that's impressive. That's impressive. And, I'm impressed. And the Rolling Stones impress me more than anybody because nobody has stayed together as long as them two have.
And long may it continue.
Yeah, well, I'm sure, I don't, listen, the last show that we did was in Branson, Missouri. There's no fucking way that they're going to end their career in Branson, Missouri.
No offense to Branson, Missouri.
No offense to please, no offense, but there's no way. I mean, if that happened, I think everybody would be surprised, including themselves. They would think, "Wow, never expected to play the last show in Branson, Missouri." So, I guess that can answer your question, or maybe not, but. Who knows? I wish I can say, but I can't. That's a question that you'd have to ask them.
I shall keep that for them. Thank you, Bernard. That brings us on to 5x5, 5 regular questions we ask everyone. So, quick fire round. Firstly, what is your favourite Rolling Stones song?
Damn, you would ask that question, would you?
Hardest ones are kept to the end.
You know what? I'll tell you what. I have a few of them. But there's one song that when it starts, the hair on the back of my neck starts up. Soon as it starts, start me up.
That's a good one to choose. What is your favourite Rolling Stones album?
Exile.
What is a deep cut or underrated track that you think deserves more love?
Okay, I'm going to give you two for that. I'm going to give you two for that question. One song I love, Mick always gives me shit about, is Dandelion.
That's a beautiful song.
It's a beautiful song. I fucking love that song. The other one would probably be Casino Boogie.
That's a good one. In your opinion, what makes the Rolling Stones such an enduring and influential band?
The personalities in the music.
And if you could describe the Rolling Stones in just 3 words, what would they be?
Badass motherfuckers. How's that?
Perfect, Bernard. Thank you so much for speaking to me today.
You got it, brother. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to Lip Service. I hope you enjoyed this episode and my chat with Bernard. If so, please give us a follow, give us a like, or drop us a comment while you're there, because it would be very much appreciated. You can find us on all the socials at Stones Lip Pod for updates, extra content and news. The next episode will be coming in a couple of weeks. Till the next time, we say goodbye.